rays of light then take control. Inhuman hands probe private places. Half nightmare, half science fiction, these harrowing accounts first surfaced in 1961.
I can tell you right now that 99% of every UFO sighting that has ever taken place has actually not been an unidentified flying object, because this has always been military technologies.
And he told us, he says, look, we worship spirits. We worship Lucifer and all his angels. They're just as beautiful as they did before they were cast out of heaven. He says there was a misunderstanding in the whole thing. He says among the inhabitants of the galaxies. And he says our master was misunderstood.
Your friend, George, took you and Roland to this mansion where people worshipped the demons. Mm-hmm. What was it like there? What kind of people were there?
Well, it was...
Perhaps we need some outside universal threat. I occasionally think how quickly our differences worldwide would vanish if we were facing an alien threat from outside this world.
What is that?
Whoa! I caught some of it.
What is that?
Where alien life forms, angels if you please, took on human form and began to mess around with women and got them pregnant. This tells me their plumbing worked. All of that frightens me, because there may be some around here, we don't even know who they are. They appear to be men. They appear to be human.
This amateur footage purports to show a UFO over the parliament in Vilnius, capital of Lithuania. The craft hovers noiselessly, appearing to land. At dawn the next morning, local militia videotaped this nearby. Enhanced, the night visitor looks like this. It moves unlike a normal helicopter or plane. In another Soviet incident, hundreds of people thought they saw a giant UFO over the city of Petrozavodsk in northwest Russia in 1977. But studies established that it was the burning booster of a secretly launched satellite. Still, at the Soviet Academy of Sciences, such phenomena are considered worthy of serious inquiry. In addition to the country's military study, this governing body for academic research coordinates a countrywide collection of information for scientific analysis. Here, the Central Committee for the Study of UFOs gathers data from 10 other scientific academies.
I would like to say a few words about our methods. For some sightings, we carry out investigations in the field.
A sighting here has resulted in 12 years of research. Train passengers reported seeing a UFO, a metallic craft that landed nearby. Biologist Yuri Simyakov believes there have been permanent changes to the scene.
We believe this could have been a landing site. This is a very interesting place because it has such strong magnetic fields.
His experiments find living creatures shun this spot. These findings are consistent with studies of other UFO sites, where the ground appears empty of all life, even microbes. Most puzzling of all, Earth samples taken from landing sites contain tiny spheres. His work has led him to conclude these spheres were extraterrestrial in origin, containing DNA, the seed of life itself. In the U.S., tests of these samples were divided. Results indicate that the spheres are either of unknown origin or common parts of groundwater filter systems. Yet some Russian researchers believe alien microtechnology is being placed here by interplanetary prowlers. Given worldwide interest, researchers have attempted to classify reports of UFO sightings and encounters with extraterrestrials. When an unidentified flying object is seen, but nothing more, it is labeled a close encounter of the first kind. Where traces are left, it becomes the second kind. Then there are close encounters of the third kind, where people report observing aliens. In close encounters of the fourth kind, the witness actually interacts with the aliens. In November 1980, in Tudmorton, England, an experienced police officer, Alan Godfrey, was on night patrol when he saw an object he could not identify.
I was on a 10-6 night duty, so I decided that I would go up to this local council estate. As I was about to turn, I saw another 500 yards up the road this object. As I got near to this object, it became apparent to me that what I was looking at wasn't something that I would normally find in the early hours of the morning in Todmorden, you know. I thought it could have been a hot air balloon that had come down, but obviously as I got nearer and nearer, I realised that this was a metallic, man-made craft. It was a nuts and bolts thing. It wasn't an hallucination, it was real. This object was 20 foot wide. It's 14 feet high. It's diamond shaped. The bottom half of it was rotating, the top half was stationary. It had a bank of dark windows, or could have been panelling. Had I got out the car, picked a brick up and thrown it at it, I'd have probably found out whether the windows or not. The trees that lined the road were shaking violently. But yet, whilst I was sat in the car, I didn't feel any vibration. I didn't hear any noise, but I certainly wasn't going to get out of the car. I picked my clipboard up, put it on my knee, and proceeded to draw it. Now, as I'm drawing the object, I'm suddenly at the other side of it, driving a police car. And the object had gone.
Gone too was a period of time. After hypnotic regression, the officer remembered more.
There's a total blackness. Then there's a feeling of floating, as though either me on my own or the vehicle, whatever, is floating. Then I wake up in a room. Now in this room, there is a very tall humanoid, for want of a better word. He was about 6 foot to 6'6", very tall, thin, with a beard. He had a skull cap on and he had this white gown on. What happens then is, I'm asked to get on this bed. Now, the questions asked to me then is, how did he, he wants to get on? Because I said, his mouth's not moving, he's not talking, it's just, he wants me to get on the bed. Obviously, whatever it was having some sort of influence over my thoughts. Yet I did feel at ease with him. I felt comfortable with him. I got the impression that I'd met him before. I wasn't in fear of him or anything like that. I didn't feel in any danger. So I'm on the bed, and then these horrible little things come. They are a lamp-shaped head with black dark eyes. That's the best way I can describe them. And there was about 7 or 8 of them.
Officers nearby said they saw a light in the sky, and Alan Godfrey insists his encounter was genuine.
Just after sunset on the evening of November 5th, 1975, a 7-man crew was piling into a 4-wheel drive vehicle after finishing a day of woodcutting near the tiny northern Arizona community of Snowflake. One of the 7 men was Travis Walton, whose curiosity that night plunged him into a living nightmare he would never forget. Just before leaving the work area, the men in the Jeep watched a glowing object emerge from behind the trees. Travis opened a door to get a better view and continued watching, stunned with his companions.
The thing was about 90 feet away, about 20 feet in diameter, about 8 feet high. It was glowing a golden color, kind of like molten metal. I couldn't hear anything at first. It must have been because when I got closer I could hear it, but it was a high-pitched intermittent sound and a low rumbling sound. It sounded like machinery or, a heavy mechanical sound. Very difficult to describe.
Travis got out of the vehicle and moved toward the object, despite cries from his friends for him to return. Walton assumed by the time he could get any closer, the object would be gone.
Just as I got up close, it started to move with a sort of a rocking motion, kind of like a spinning top, like when it's slowing down to fall over, except it wasn't spinning. The same side stayed toward me. And when it started to move, it got real loud, and that really scared me. I jumped down behind a log, and I looked up at this thing, and I decided then I was in a lot of danger, and I was going to get the heck out of there. And I raised up to go. It's the last thing I remember. I raised up and I started to turn, and I was just about in a high crouch when wham, I felt a numbing shock hit me. It kind of like in the head.
The entire Arab world was enslaved by one man, Hassan ibn al-Sabah, the old man of the mountain. He established the Hashashin, who operated a part Mohammedanism, which controlled by terror and fear much of India, Asia Minor, and most of the Mediterranean basin. They became a priesthood that used an extremely effective mind control mechanism, an extortion tool that enabled the assassins to control the civilized world for several hundred years. Their method was simple. Young men were kidnapped and knocked unconscious with hashish. They were taken to a garden filled with beautiful black-eyed houris, in a harem decorated with rivers of milk and honey. The young men were told that they were in paradise. They were promised they could return and live there forever if they sacrificed themselves as an assassin of whomever they were commanded to kill. The men were knocked out again and shoved out of the world to carry out the assassination mission. Meanwhile, the old man of the mountain sent a messenger to the caliph, or whatever wealthy ruler from whom they demanded a payment, demanding camel-loads of gold, spices, incense, or other valuables. If payment did not arrive on time, the assassin would be sent to kill the offending party. There was virtually no defense against the unknown assailant, who wanted nothing more than to carry out his mission, be killed, and return to heaven. This is a very crude example of how simple and effective a brainwashing and mind control operation can be when it is used skillfully and forcefully. It is a small-scale demonstration of how the amnesia mind control operation is used against the entire Isbi population of Earth by the Old Empire. 1119 A.D., the Knights Templar was established as a Christian military unit after the First Crusade, but quickly transformed into the basis for the international banking system to accumulate money to conduct the agenda of operatives for vestiges of the old empire on Earth. 1135 to 1230 A.D., the Domain Expeditionary Force completed the annihilation of the remaining remnants of the old empire space fleet operating in the solar system around Earth. Unfortunately, their long-established thought control operation remains largely intact. 1307 A.D., the Knights Templar was disbanded by King Philip IV of France, who was deeply in debt to the order. He pressured Pope Clement V to condemn the order's members, have them arrested, tortured them into giving false confessions, and burned them at the stake in an effort to erase his debt by seizing all of their wealth. The majority of the Templars fled to Switzerland, where they established an international banking system which secretly controls the economy of Earth. Old empire operatives act as an unseen influence on international bankers. The banks are operated covertly as an on-combatant provocateur to covertly promote and finance weapons and warfare between the nations of Earth. Warfare is an internal mechanism of control over the inmate population. The purpose of the senseless genocide and carnage of wars financed by these international banks is to prevent the Isbis of Earth from sharing open communication, cooperate together in activities that might enable Isbis to prosper, become enlightened, and escape their imprisonment.
One of them was John Dewey. John Dewey is the father of our failing, disastrous public education system. Here's what he said. Listen very carefully. John Dewey, professor of philosophy in Columbia University, who was the next speaker, was listened to with great intentness. He said, quote, "Someone remarked that the best way to unite all the nations on this globe would be an attack from some other planet. In the face of such an alien enemy, people would respond with a sense of their unity of interest and purpose." Unquote. Now, bear in mind, folks, that's 1917. One of the next documents that I found, and I found quite a few, but one that's pretty important, is called the Report from Iron Mountain, The Probability and Desirability of Permanent Peace. Now, I encourage you to find this book, wherever you can find it. I don't know where you can get it, but find it. Page 66. Credibility, in fact, lies at the heart of the problem of developing a political substitute for war. This is where the space race proposals, in many ways so well suited as economic substitutes for war, fall short. The most ambitious and unrealistic space project cannot of itself generate a believable external menace. It has been hotly argued that such a menace would offer the last best hope of peace, etc., by uniting mankind against the danger of destruction by creatures from other planets or from outer space. Experiments have been proposed to test the credibility of an out-of-our-world invasion threat. And it continues on another page. Nevertheless, an effective political substitute for war would require alternate enemies, some of which might seem equally far-fetched in the context of the current war system. It may be, for instance, that gross pollution of the environment can eventually replace the possibility of mass destruction by nuclear weapons as the principal substitute for war. Are you beginning to get the message, folks? Poisoning of the air and of the principal sources of food and water supply is already well advanced, and at first glance would seem promising in this respect. It constitutes a threat that can be dealt with only through social organization and political power. But from present indications, it will be a generation to a generation and a half before environmental pollution, however severe, will be sufficiently menacing on a global scale to offer a possible basis for a solution. However unlikely some of the possible alternate enemies we have mentioned may seem, we must emphasize that one must be found of credible quality and magnitude if a transition to peace is ever to come about without social disintegration. It is more probable, in our judgment, that such a threat will have to be invented rather than developed from unknown conditions. Ladies and gentlemen, they have created so many alternate enemies in order to bring about their one-world totalitarian socialist state that we don't know which enemy to believe is real or is false, or whether to just toss them all out on their ears. And I think that that is probably going to be the best solution. Disarmament is no accident. All of these bills in Congress to take away our weapons is no accident. The intentional environmental pollution of our lakes, rivers, streams, oceans, forests, everything is no accident, as you just heard. These things were planned many, many years ago. All the bombardment of the public with movies about flying saucers in the 50s, right after the United Nations Treaty was signed and the UN Participation Act was pushed through Congress, and all of the incidents since that have convinced the majority of the American people that flying saucers are real and extraterrestrials exist, and that flying saucers are from an extraterrestrial origin. This is being promulgated in many ways, by television commercials, in the movies, in the newspapers, by creating incidents either real or imagined. I believe, because of my research, and because of the extensive documentation that I've found and that is in my book, that this whole scenario has been created to give us an artificial alien threat from outer space. During the Reagan administration, he made 6 speeches, specifically talked about a threat from outer space by some other species from some other planet. 6, ladies and gentlemen. Why would the president repeat the same thing 6 times, tagged on to the ends of speeches by him? The speechwriters did not put that in the speech. Ronald Reagan added it himself.
Perhaps we need some outside universal threat. I occasionally think how quickly our differences worldwide would vanish if we were facing an alien threat from outside this world.
This was a powerful suggestion to implant into the minds of the people of the world that there really is a threat from some other species, from some other planet to this earth. Now, you people out there have been ignoring the U.F.O. phenomenon for too long. It has all the earmarks of the most successful, most sophisticated mind control operation in the history of the world, and you are ignoring it. What better way to implement a plan to bring about a one-world government than to create the possibility in the minds of the people of the world that we are being threatened from some other species, from some other planet, and do it in a way that if anybody questions it or challenged it or wants to talk about it publicly, that they are ridiculed.
And the ultimate goal is to make the earth look very small, to present the people of the world with an external threat to this earth, a superior race from some other planet, vastly superior to us in intellect, philosophy, and technology, in order to cause the dissolution of nation-states, the dissolution of all existing religions, and the formation of the world totalitarian socialist government.
has an obligation to the people to tell the truth. No matter what that truth might be, the people have a right to know that planet Earth is being visited by a highly evolved intelligence that is not from this world.
The reason I state that, when I got out in 1989, we had cataloged 57 different species. You have individuals that look very much like you and myself that could walk among us and you wouldn't even notice the difference, except for some of the things that they might be able to go ahead, even in a dark room, and touch an object and go ahead and identify what color that object might be. They would have a heightened sense of smell, sight, hearing. The situation is that you have various types of what we normally call grays. We didn't call them grays in the military, but you had at least 3 types of the grays. You had some that were much taller than we were. The unique thing that I'd like to point out for the most part is that the entities that we did catalog were in fact humanoid. Now this created a situation where the scientific community was trying to figure out why that would be the case, because you would expect that if life evolved on other planets, that they would take on some type of other being, so to speak, not necessarily look humanoid or be bipedal such as we are. But apparently we got quite a few of the species out there that are humanoid in appearance, and that creates a question that yet has to be answered by science.
Ancient legends tell of flying people who arrived amidst fire and thundering noise. If ancient astronauts did land here, what effect would they have had upon early Earthmen? Perhaps they were worshipped, feared, loved. Perhaps they brought gifts, a new world of knowledge. If we accept the premise that beings from another civilization visited here ages ago, then some of the mysteries of our past take on a new and startling light. The world is a storehouse, an archive of unexplained phenomena. Gigantic creations, in effigy of what? To appease or acclaim whom? Early stone carvers left silent records for their descendants. Folk legend surrounds their origin. Strange stories of gods who appeared riding across the skies in flaming chariots of light. Whole civilizations were structured around these gods. Civilizations which at one time flourished and then mysteriously disappeared. Only stone relics survive to give mute testimony to their time. Their true history has been the cause of much scientific inquiry and romantic speculation. Teotihuacan lies on a broad, flat plain curtained by mountains in central Mexico. It was once the center of the highly advanced Aztec Empire. When the Spaniards arrived in the early 16th century, they found an established society of artisans and intellectuals. The name Teotihuacan means where the gods reside. And the city of the gods is dominated by the Pyramid of the Sun. It is 216 feet high and forms a small mountain weighing 2.5 million tons. Archaeology seeks answers to questions about man's past by digging through what he has left behind. Here they uncovered a chain of riddles which stretches across the expanse of modern Mexico. A mile to the south is the temple of Quetzalcoatl. Legend tells us that he was a light-skinned, bearded man who came from the stars. Supposedly, he taught men law, the arts, and the cultivation of corn. The head of a great feathered serpent represents the god Quetzalcoatl. When Quetzalcoatl finished his mission on Earth, he departed to his native star, promising to come back someday.